Hi, my name is Kathy Seal and I own the Quilt Patch in Tecumseh, Michigan, and I wanted to show you today a way to do bias binding for your next quilt project that is just as easy to do as what grain line binding is. So let's learn how to do that. The first thing that we're going to do is open our fabric up to a single layer, and if we go back and remember our very beginning quilting classes or fabric sewing classes, we'll remember that this is the lengthwise. What runs right next to the selvage is the lengthwise grain, and it doesn't move at all. And then there's the cross grain that goes from selvage to selvage, and that moves just a little bit. But what we want to cut for bias binding is this 45-degree angle, and this is the guy that stretches from here to next week. So that's what we want to go in and cut. So once we have our fabric to a single layer, what we're going to do is take one corner and we're going to bring it right here next to this edge and line that up. Right here is our bias strip. So if I could put a ruler on this right here and cut it, that is the strip we want to cut, but it's too long to fit on my mat. So all I have to do is come in, we're going to line these folds up, one on top of one another. Now that is still too long to fit on my mat, and I don't have a ruler that long, so we're going to make one more fold just like this, and right there is that bias edge that we want to cut, and you can flip that down so it's not in your way. Now I'm a right-handed cutter, so what I'm going to do is turn this around so it's on my mat for me to cut, and I'm going to line it up to a line on the mat, because what I want to do is trim off all the folds right here. So when I come in, I lay my ruler down. Now you're going to have to press down a little bit harder with your rotary cutter because this is quite a few layers that we're cutting through. So right there is that bias strip, and you can see how much that stretches. So when I'm making binding for a quilt, I like 2.5-inch strips. Some people like 2.25-inch strips. You can go in and use your regular rotary cutting ruler, or you can use a binding tool. Creative Grids came out with a new binding tool that is 2.5 inches wide. So I put it right here flush to the side of my fabric, and I go in and I make my cuts. Every time I'm making a cut, I'm cutting 2 pieces. So as I continue down, and I'm going to go in and get as many as I need, continuing down the fabric just like this. Once I have my pieces cut, I come in and I have to go to the sewing machine and I have to stitch them together. So what I have students do when they're here learning this is I have them go in and put these together just like they're going to be. They're going to be sewn together just like that. And then it's very easy to see how all you have to do is flip that over and then sew from this corner to this corner right here. After I've gone in and stitched those 2 together, I go and open them up like a garment maker opens up seam allowances, so there's the least amount of bulk when you're doing your binding. After all the strips have been hooked together and you have a big long snake that's as many times around as your quilt is, you're going to go in and you're going to fold these with the pretty side showing to the outside. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to get all my other things ready to show you the next step on how to put it on the quilt. Okay, so now we have our 2 samples on how we can go in and stitch the binding on, and it's decision time. You have to decide whether you're going to stitch this final bit, the last stitching, by hand when we wrap this around and it has to get stitched down. Do you like doing that by hand? Or are you like a lot of people that come into the store and this project will sit forever if they have to go and do that final stitching by hand? So then we have a different way to do it where you can go in and do the final stitching by machine. So choice number 1, if you want to do it by hand, you're going to apply your binding or stitch your binding down to the top side of the project, and you're going to leave your batting and your backing hanging out over the edge. So if you want to do the final stitching by machine, then you're going to go in and you're going to trim everything flush to the side of the quilt, because where you're applying it, when you're doing it by hand, you're applying it to the top. When you do it by machine, you're going to put it to the back. You're going to start with the binding laying on the back side, and then you're going to wrap it around the front. So let's go in and learn either way how to put it on, either to the top side or to the back side. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start stitching 8 inches down. We're not going to start right here at the edge. We're going to leave an opening. So we're going to start stitching right here. And then we're going to come down to the corner and we are going to leave 1/4 of an inch unstitched. So when you get down here, you're going to leave that 1/4 inch. You're going to go backwards and forwards with your sewing machine. So it's a good strong point there because we're going to put some pressure on that when we go in and fold to get a mitered corner. So once we have that left, we're going to cut the thread. We're going to take it out of our sewing machine and we're going to lay it on the table next to us. And this is where I have people think of the face of a clock. If this is noon, 3, 6, and 9, we will be stitching our binding down coming toward 6 o'clock. Once we have that taken out of our machine and we're ready to make our fold, we're going to come in and we're going to flip it back to 3 o'clock. And the most important part about getting a nice corner on your binding is that when you make this fold, that this continues the line of the quilt. If it goes this way or if it comes up, you're not going to get a nice mitered corner on the front side. So you have to go in and continue the quilt in a nice straight line. We're sewing down at 6 o'clock, we flip it back to 3 o'clock, and then we're going to come and flip it over to 9 o'clock. And this is where I come in and I stick a pin right here in this corner. On a small project like this, it's not a big deal to take it and turn the project, but on a bigger quilt, this is hard to hang on to while you're turning the project. Now we're going to come in and we are ready to get started. We're going to start right here at the end. We're not leaving 1/4 inch. We're going to start right here at the end and we're going to go and sew it all the way down. We're going to go all around, all 4 corners exactly the same way. So now we've come all the way around. We've done all 4 corners exactly the same way. And now what we have to do is figure out how these 2 ends are going to live together. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to pretend sew right here by sticking some pins in. But yours is going to be stitched. This is where you're going to stitch. When you get to this part and you're going to have an opening between the beginning and the end that's unstitched, and then you're going to take it out of your sewing machine, so cut the thread right here, and we're going to go back and lay it on our cutting mat because what we want to do is take the ending part of the strip, open it up to a single layer, lay the beginning strip inside of that, and then you're going to mark where the end of the beginning strip is right here. So you're just going to make a little dashed line that shows you the end of the beginning strip. And it's marked on the finishing strip. And then what we're going to do is come over here. I just move it right off onto my cutting mat. When you have a binding tool that has a 45-degree angle like this one does, I just lay it right here on this strip and you can see how evenly the strip, how it lays on top of the strip. What we are trying to do is cut a 1/2 inch past the mark we made on a 45-degree angle. So with this ruler, it's very easy to do. There's the dotted line that you line up with your mark that you made, and then you're going to cut. The ruler goes a 1/2 inch past and you're going to go in and cut. If you want to do it with your regular ruler, oops, I didn't get that, just a second. There we go. If you want to do it with your regular ruler, you're going to use the 45-degree angle on your regular ruler, and then you are going to put that at a 1/2 inch, the 1/2 inch mark right there, and line that up with the 45 on your regular ruler, and that gives you the same angle. So either way you go, what we're looking for is a 1/2 inch past where we marked. Once you have that done, you're going to come in just like this and you're going to pull these together and then you're going to go and sew them. When you sew them together, you're going to have a little bit of an overhang there and that is going to line up to 1/4 of an inch. So you're going to come in here and you're going to sew this. I'm pretend sewing it again, just like this. But this is going to be stitched, and once it's stitched, when you lay this down on your project, it's exactly the correct length to fit those 2 edges together. And then you're going to close this up to this, and then it's perfect when it's not pinned. It's a nice, unbulky connection between the beginning and the end. Now I have my ironing board set up and we're ready to take the very last step on getting our worry-free bias binding put on. If I'm going to do it by hand, the last stitching, and I started with the top, it's at this point now, once I'm all the way around the outside, that I'm going to go and trim the batting and the backing flush all the way around to the quilt. If I started and I want to do it by machine, I started with that so that I knew where the edge of the quilt was to put the binding down. So this is one that we're going to do by machine. So now all my binding is stitched down, and I'm going to go up to the ironing board and I'm going to push this over from the back side. When I flip this corner, it's going to kind of cup around the edge because that's what's going to make that nice miter. And I'm going to go all the way around when I'm doing my real project. And now we're ready to come up on the sides. I like working with Roxanne's Glue Basted as my way of putting the binding around to the front or to the back for stitching. I don't use pins and I don't use the clips. I go in and use Roxanne's Glue Basted. So I'm going to come just like this and I'm going to stick a little bit of glue right in that seam allowance on that stitch line of when I stitch the binding down. And then I'm going to come with my iron, and when I fold this over, just like this, I'm going to iron it down, and the heat of the iron dries the glue, so I don't have to stand there waiting for the glue to set. When I get up into my corner like this, I am going to make sure that I press that 45-degree angle right there that I get. So when I come around the next side, when I come in here like this and I hold on to that, look at that gorgeous corner that you get, and it is just so sharp and so beautiful, and they match up nicely. So I'm going to come now and go down this side. I put a little dot of glue on that edge right there so it'll stay down, and then I go down that side just like I did this one, and I'm going to hold that down in that tip, fold it over, and then I'm going to come with my iron again, and I'm going to iron that glue dry so that it sets. And now I am ready to go into my sewing machine, and we have to stitch this down. When we are stitching it down by machine, you have to remember that you want your bobbin thread to match your backing fabric just as close as you can get it. Because when I come in here and I stitch, now you can top stitch, you can do a decorative stitch, a buttonhole stitch, or whatever you want to stitch this down. But where I'm pinning right now, I'm going to hold this up and hopefully you can see it. Right there, it's just to the side of where this binding strip is sewn onto. That is where your bobbin thread is going to show up. So you have to make sure that you match your bobbin thread to your backing fabric. So to try and make things easier for you so you don't have to memorize everything that we talked about today, I put together a binding card, Worry-Free Bias Binding, that goes through all the steps that we did today. How to fold the fabric to cut the strips, how to stitch them together, and whether you're going to do the final stitching by hand or by machine, how to navigate the corners, and how to put the ends together. So this is the easiest way to go in and reference the next time you're doing bias binding for your quilt top. Thanks for watching.